Hello Luz TV, this is Abul Fazal from the LSE Strategy and Management Consultancy Conference. I'm here with Mr. Colin Cram, the Director of Marc 1, a successful consultancy in the UK. So, Mr. Cram, would you like to tell us a bit more about Marc 1 and what it does?
Well, Marc 1, what I do is both advise public and private sectors on basically delivering better value for money, on efficiency, and it ranges from procurement, general efficiency, shared services, outsourcing. So that's one of the things I do, but I do an awful lot of writing. Thought leadership is a word that's loosely used, but nevertheless government people and government have adopted some of my ideas, and do some broadcasting as well. So it keeps me extremely busy. And obviously I use some colleagues as well for some of the work that I do, and it's proving extremely interesting. So what I do is I use my actually 40 years public sector experience, the knowledge about how to get things done, the knowledge of what works, what doesn't work, and apply that.
Well, that's great. So as you mentioned that you have an extensive experience with the public sector, what would you say the main challenges the government is facing right now?
Two big challenges. One, or probably more than two actually, but one is actually delivering more efficient public services. Okay. And that is a major challenge because there's an awful lot of managers in the public sector who are probably not capable, chief executives in the public sector who are not capable of delivering efficiency. Many of them were recruited in times of plenty when there was a lot of money about and the focus was on delivering services. Now the focus is on efficiency, and it requires different skills, different mindset, and I think one issue is that many are not of the right mindset, and in some instances you probably need to change managers to people who now can deal with the present situation. Certainly the challenge that the government has set itself is actually getting local communities to deliver more services, and getting central government off the backs of people, I think you would see that as. And I think that is a huge challenge. That's a very big cultural change. I'm sure the government would like to see that happen quickly, but actually we're talking about a major cultural change that I think will take 10, 20 years to deliver. So I think those are probably two of the big issues that the government has got. I think the third one is how can we generate economic growth? And that is a very big issue, and what I'm arguing is that public sector procurement, which is a massive £236 billion a year, about 1/6 of UK gross domestic product, could be used much more effectively to generate public sector growth, to generate economic growth. And the government has no plans as to how to do this, but it's got some limited ideas and it's falling well short. It's got policy statements, aspirations. Some of those statements conflict with each other, and it needs to develop a coherent policy and approach to actually deliver that, and it's a very long way off doing that. Right, so that's a very big challenge for it.
Yeah, that's interesting. You mentioned that how the government is facing challenges in terms of not achieving full efficiency and how it lacks management expertise to maximize its potential. How would you say management consultancy firms or basic consultancy firms can take advantage of this scenario and maximize their business returns based on this situation?
I think that consultancy organisations actually have to come up with a stronger proposition as to what they can do. And at the moment, the way I see it is the consultancy firms, they're competing with each other, which is fine, but I don't see the consultancy companies as a whole have come up with a proposition as to how government can actually tackle these three issues. It doesn't seem to exist to me. I mean, I could come up with a proposition quite easily because of my experience, but the consultancy industry, I think, needs to do so as well. Then what they'll do is be able to demonstrate the value that they can bring to this, how they can help government deliver its policies, and government then will be much more interested in listening to them. But I see the consultancy industry, it's being pretty reactive rather than proactive. It's responding to tenders, there's a bit of complaint about the reduction in business with consultancies, but I think consultancies can actually do much more to generate business, generate much more interest. And the point I made at the end of the session was about outsourcing, for example, that I think there's going to be a big trend, a continuation of the trend to outsource, which is a massive trend. Consultancies can get involved in that, but I don't see many consultancies coming up, consultancy as a whole, coming up with a strategy as to what the public sector should look like in 10 years' time, 15 years' time, and how it would get there. So I think the consultancy industry can do very much more to help itself. It needs to paint the big picture. Once you've got government accepting the big picture, then there'll be loads of opportunities, many opportunities, but it's not really painting the big picture, not in a coherent way, and that's what it needs to do.
All right.
That would be my recommendation to the big consultancies. Do need to get together and to do that.
What do you personally feel that the government should achieve within the next 10 to 15 years in terms of efficiency and public sector services?
I think that in terms of public sector services, it needs to actually have a clear view as to what services the government should provide. The cost, due to the demographic changes, the cost of some of these services is going to become unaffordable. So therefore there's some very difficult decisions to be taken as to what it can provide. It is also going to have some very difficult decisions about areas such as the big benefits bill, and is that affordable, and what are the social consequences if it's not, and what can it do to perhaps really try and reduce the benefits bill. And I think it has got something of a strategy in place, but I think it will need to do much more, and not just cut, because the social consequences could be pretty drastic. So it needs to think about employment, much fuller employment. It needs to think about getting the skills, getting people skilled up appropriately. And I think the government is doing that, but again, it's not really, I don't see, if you like, a measurable strategy. So it will certainly have to address the issue as to what the public sector should be providing and what citizens should be providing themselves. I think it's just a fact of life. It does need to address efficiency, and too much of the public sector still acts in isolation. And for example, councils, the National Health Service, could work together in terms of, could actually join together in terms of having common systems, in terms of doing procurement jointly, which is £236 billion a year, and also I think strengthening management. I should be writing an article this weekend on accountability, and there seems to me to be a lack of accountability in the public sector at the moment, and managers. Managers are not getting rid of underperforming staff in the way they should. When things go wrong, managers seem to get away scot-free. There's no, so they seem to be, they still seem to manage to retain their jobs even when there are huge public spending disasters. And I think therefore there also needs to be very much more accountability. I think the general public as well need to understand where accountability lies. So for example in the NHS, accountability does lie with the Secretary of State, but the Secretary of State cannot force every manager to run a hospital really efficiently, and those managers need to take accountability. I think the other thing is that the public sector needs to shrink very considerably and to be using much more widely the resources that are available in the private sector and that are available in the voluntary sector. Now, management consultancy could help with all of those things, but it does need to create the vision. It needs to create, if you like, a well-researched vision and to be able to present it to the government. And I think it could do that, you know, and I'd be very willing to play my part with the big companies, because certainly I could contribute to that and do that. I think the tragedy is that some of these things have been talked about, you know, for a long time, 30 years. Having the public sector as a small core commissioning services, and that was discussed 30 years ago in the Cabinet Office when I was there. In fact, I was an advocate of that. Yet we're moving so slowly towards that, and maybe it's time the government, you know, decided that it needs to really move forward with that.
Well, thank you very much for your insight into your views. for the public sector and its future. Before we finish, I have one final question as to how you feel about this arrangement that the LSE students have come up with today. How do you feel about the conference?
I think it's absolutely brilliant. I was amazed. Let's face it, the conference started late. It started late because of the sheer number of people. So you've got a huge number of people, very keen, enthusiastic people, keen to learn. I think it's an absolutely brilliant event. You've got some great speakers. We certainly had, I think, what was a very good debate. I thought the first keynote speaker was very interesting. So you've got some great speakers. It's a tremendous educational event. Even if these students don't go into management consultancy, it's a tremendous educational event for them. So yeah, I think it's absolutely admirable. It's an excellent event. It's also a great networking event. You've got people from so many different backgrounds and countries, so they can actually share experiences, and one of the real benefits they will get out of it will be the networking times, the evenings, the meal times and so on. And if they really make an effort to meet lots of different people from different backgrounds, different countries and so on, they'll get a tremendous amount out of it. Yeah, I think it's I was just amazed actually. I think it's a brilliant event. I honestly hadn't realised how good it was going to be.
Thank you very much for your time today. I hope you enjoyed interviewing with us.
Yeah, I did. Thank you very much, and congratulations to all of those who organised this. I think it's a brilliant job.
Thank you very much.
Okay.